Now, Grant Shapps has warned Britain's enemies are gathering around us. And he said the prospect of war is intensifying in a speech he gave yesterday. The Defence Secretary said Britain should prepare for possible wars with China, Russia, Iran and North Korea in the next 5 years.
He added that it is now critical for NATO members to increase their defence spending to at least 2% of national income. Joining us now is the former Commanding General of the US Army in Europe, Ben Hodges. Ben, good morning. Welcome to Talk Today. Thank you so much. Strong words from Shapps yesterday. I have my own theory. It's election year. Interestingly, what was told earlier on the show to us was that Great Britain currently spends 2.5% of GDP. When they were both separately standing to be the leader of the Tory party, Grant Shapps, the now Defence Secretary, and Jeremy Hunt, the now Chancellor, both said that they would spend 3%, which is billions more. Is this a response to what's happening in the world, and is it right? What do you make of it?
Well, I was impressed, actually, with what your Defense Secretary said. What's happening with the Russia's attack against Ukraine, the Hamas attack against Israel, what North Korea is doing, China, these are all connected. And our problem over the past few years is that we have failed to think strategically and connect all of these different threats. If we thought strategically, we'd be getting better organized in terms of our defense industry, of working together with allies to protect all of the strategic interests we have. Instead, we have been reluctant to call things out. Even my own president, who's done a good job, I think, in helping Ukraine and addressing other problems, even he is not willing to say that we want Ukraine to win, to defeat Russia. So I think your secretary is correct to say that if we are not prepared, then the risk of a conflict, a broader conflict, actually goes up.
He said we're in this pre-war phase. If we are then to better prepare, what would that look like?
Well, first of all, I think it's important when our elected officials speak to us as adults, talk about the threat, not in hyperbole, but to be very clear that if Ukraine is defeated, for example, listen to what Russia says. I mean, they say that the Russian Empire has no borders, that they will continue on to reclaim what they think is theirs, which are the Baltic states. And of course, those are NATO allies, which means that all of us will end up being in a conflict if Russia attacks a NATO country, where you have British soldiers posted in Estonia, German soldiers in Lithuania, American soldiers, Canadian soldiers, all in that area there. So we know from history that the Russians absolutely only respect strength. They laugh at us when we talk about things, but don't actually do things. This war against Ukraine is the result of failed deterrence. They saw we did nothing after they invaded Georgia. We did nothing after they invaded Ukraine in 2014. We in the United States, obviously, they saw us in total disarray after the last election, January 6th, and the way we came out of Afghanistan. So I think the Kremlin believes if we look that bad, that disjointed, that we will be vulnerable. So again, I think what Mr. Shapps said is correct, and it's appropriate to be clear-eyed about the threats.
It's interesting, isn't it, Ben? You can sit this side of the pond and say, oh, it's election year. You can say Ben Wallace, who was Defence Secretary for a long time, left. He wanted more money. I think it's interesting that the rhetoric is now addressing, the elephant in the room. Russia and China described by Shapps as having a no-limits partnership. We've had Tobias Ellwood on the show last week, who used to be the chair of the Defence Select Committee, saying we are now in a position, it's not warmongering, we're now in a position like 39. There's a Cold War. Russia and China and Iran are a danger. And unless we arm ourselves, we will find ourselves in a difficult position. But of course, Ben, you'd understand this. The world, certainly the United Kingdom and America, are in the middle of a cost of living crisis. And there becomes that whole war fatigue argument, which says, how do you convince people to give billions to these wars when people are struggling to get the very basic things they need to live their lives? That, for me, is what politicians need to do.
Yeah, sure. But of course, none of us should be fatigued about Russia's war against Ukraine, because all of us are sitting at home.
Absolutely.
There are no British soldiers, no American soldiers have even broken a fingernail in Russia's war against Ukraine. And I think our politicians have to explain to our voters, talk to us like adults, why helping Ukraine defeat Russia is good for us. Economic stability, preventing the spread of the conflict, and of course, the Chinese are watching. The Chinese are watching to see, does the UK, do the United States, do all of our allies in the West have the political will, the defense industrial capacity, and the military capability to address all of these threats? If we don't, if they think that we don't, then I think the risk goes up. And I live here in Frankfurt, Germany, and my German neighbors are waking up to the reality. So, I mean, there's a different tone in the conversation when I speak with my German neighbors about the threat, which is very important. Certainly, Putin never would have imagined that Germany would be spending a lot more money on defense and getting serious about its role inside NATO.
Ben, thank you.